Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. A lot of stuff to get to today, starting the show off with what's going to be a great interview. Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports, college football writer, joins me. Shehan, what's going on, man?
Hey, I appreciate you having me. I do have to ask, so the fact that you're the Real Jonathan Smith Show, is that shade to the Michigan State head coach?
A little bit. The idea was, let's be honest, Jonathan Smith is a pretty basic name, and the idea is that I'm not in witness protection. Like, my real name is actually Jonathan Smith. But yeah, that's a great point. I'm excited for Michigan State this year. I think the other Jonathan Smith, I think he's a really good coach, and I think they're going to be pretty good this year.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, I don't run into this issue with having to clarify I'm the real Shehan Jeyarajah. So I guess it's a new adventure for me.
Yeah. So I want to start with the article that you wrote over there on CBSSports.com, just talking about the coaches polls, who's overrated, who's underrated. So Michigan, the defending champs, ranked eighth in the country. You had them listed as overrated. Why is that?
Well, it's interesting, right? I mean, it's so rare for a team that is the reigning national champion to not come back into the year ranked certainly in the top 10, often in the top 5. But you also have to go back to 1997 for the last time that a reigning national champion lost their coach. You look at the amount of production that they lost, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, quarterback J.J. McCarthy among them, but also all of the good wide receivers, all of the good offensive linemen, their top running back, Blake Corum. Certainly on the defense side of the ball, they still have a lot coming back, and I don't expect any sort of total collapse, right? We're not going to see a 2023 TCU or anything like that. But yeah. I do think that when you look at this team and this roster, it's so different than it was last year. And that goes from the top on down. Of course, Jim Harbaugh off to the NFL, Sharon Moore coming in. We don't even know, for example, if there would potentially be any sanctions during the season as well that could disrupt things. So I still view this certainly as being a team in the 8 to 9 win range. And actually, if you look back at 1997, the last time that a reigning national champion lost their coach, that team, which was Nebraska, started the season number 4 and ended the season number 19 with a 9-4 record. I think that Michigan could absolutely have a season like that. But to have them 8 heading into the year, it feels a little high for me.
Okay, fair enough. Now, Michigan, obviously, one of the major stories, not just in college football, but in really the entire sports world. What are kind of your thoughts on the scandal? What should the punishment be? Because there seems to be some pretty damning stuff in there.
Yeah, it's fascinating, right? I mean, the first piece of this is, look, it kind of just confirmed what we had all heard, what had been reported, what we all sort of knew. And it also helps understand, hey, this is why the Big Ten decided to take pretty immediate action and suspend Jim Harbaugh for a couple of games at the end of the season. So I don't think that there's necessarily a whole lot of new. Maybe the biggest new that we're learning from this is the fact that, hey, Sharon Moore had at least 50 texts that he deleted from Connor Stalions. Also, the apparent confirmation that Connor Stalions was the guy on the sidelines of the Central Michigan game. So certainly, I mean, I would imagine that Connor Stalions specifically is going to be, I'd be curious if he's banned permanently from being involved at Michigan or maybe in college athletics. For the rest of it, right, they had 3 games where their head coach was suspended last year. I think that Sharon Moore probably will be suspended at least one more game, whether it's in 24 or 25 is kind of up in the air. But I don't necessarily think that there's going to be these giant issues. I don't expect, for example, huge vacating wins or anything like that. I don't expect massive sort of roster issues or anything like that. And also, when you look at it too, this is kind of a unique situation in the NCAA where they're trying to find their legislative power, but they're also doing it against a school in Michigan that is willing to fight back against any tiny thing. They're willing to take anything to court, just like they did whenever Jim Harbaugh was suspended. So I think that this is more going to be confirmation of the story that we already knew than necessarily a lot more coming out with major long-ranging consequences. But I do expect that, whether it's in the next couple of months or in the next year or so, there will be punishments coming to Michigan.
Joined by Shehan Jeyarajah, geez, Jonathan, of CBS Sports college football writer. So we see teams do this all the time. Whenever they're about to get in trouble, they'll suspend their coach in hopes that the punishment is lessened because of that. Do you think that that really has an impact on what the NCAA does?
Well, I think that what a school can do that does have an impact is big picture cooperate. I think that when you're in that situation, when the NCAA feels like, okay, they were forthright, a lot of these violations, by the way, which people might not realize, are actually submitted by the school, right, are self-reported, and that includes some more serious ones. Now, the most serious, of course, the school is going to try to insulate themselves from, but I look back a couple of years ago to the Tennessee situation, like Jeremy Pruitt and that staff, they were turned in by their own school for committing violations because you do get rewarded by the NCAA for cooperating, but two, also, if you don't cooperate, that can make it potentially come down a little bit harder. The issue for Michigan, especially when it comes to this second case, because remember, they self-imposed punishment over the first three games, which was related to not the sign stealing scandal, but actually to illegal recruiting practices during the COVID dead period. So they did not suspend Jim Harbaugh for the final three games, so they won't get per se credit for that. But when a school decides to do that, I think that it has to be part of a bigger comprehensive picture. It has to be, hey, not only are we suspending it, but we're trying to be forthright. There's a pathway to resolving NCAA issues called a negotiated resolution, and that doesn't seem to be the method with which Michigan is going about things. So even if they had suspended Jim Harbaugh for a couple of games related to this case, I don't think that necessarily guarantees leniency if for the rest of the case, they're not necessarily cooperating or doing their part.
Okay, fair enough. The other school that I think has kind of moved to the forefront of college football drama is Colorado. I don't know if you saw the article by Athlon just with, I don't know, I feel like when you have a former player describing your program as a real life Grand Theft Auto, like that's not a good thing. What can we expect from Colorado in year two of Deion Sanders?
Yeah, and I will say, right, like you always want to be a little careful with sort of these types of pieces, but I mean I think that it's certainly that the allegations in it are very odd. I think it's fair to say, and it's funny whenever Deion Sanders took over that program, he kind of said like, I don't know what team culture is. Everybody keeps using that word, but like, who cares? What is team culture? Like, my culture is that I want to win. And I think that yes, there's merit to what he's saying. The idea that like, maybe we put too much stock into what a coach says about culture. But I do also think that this is one of those things too, where if you do have a team culture that is poor, it reflects in this kind of way, right? It reflects in the way of players feel berated, players don't feel bought in, players feel unsafe within your program. And I think that kind of translates onto the field. I don't think it's any secret that Deion Sanders specifically kind of has favorites, right? Certainly his son's among them. Travis Hunter is enough of a favorite that he's been almost referred to as being his son. I think that Cormani McLean, who's one of the players mentioned in the piece who was, I guess you could say, kind of abused a little bit, was somebody who I think certainly expected to come on campus and be one of Deion Sanders' favorites, and for various reasons, including some that are his fault. I think, he did not stay in the good graces of that staff, but this is where team culture does matter, is kind of that ability to self-regulate and make sure that everybody's on the same page and feeling good. Because I think that people talk so much about the idea of tough love and being tough and sort of forcing you to go through things. But I think players have to make sure and understand that there's love at least on the other side. And when you don't do that, I think that that's when you run into trouble.
Yeah, I completely agree. Joined by Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports, college football writer, talking a little bit about Colorado prime time and just all that. And Deion Sanders is such an interesting case study because I feel like he should be one of the best coaches in college football. Like very successful in the NFL, clearly knows what it takes to win, having been a part of NFL teams that won, having built a good program at Jackson State. But I feel like his personality gets in the way, which is, just an interesting thing. I think he's prideful, and I think it's hard to build a good culture when everything is the player's fault and the coach never takes on any responsibility himself. What do you kind of think about that whole premise?
Well, and I think one thing that's interesting is that you hear Deion Sanders talk, and I've gotten to in person a couple of times. He always talks about Colorado being a pro-style program, that they run it like a professional organization. But I think that while I do think there's a little bit of merit to that, I think that it kind of is also not collegiate in some of the ways that matter in college athletics, which is you're getting imperfect, unfinished products coming into your program that you need to find ways to develop and put into better situations. And I don't know that when you look at just the one season, and that's the only data that we have at this level, but when you look at that season, I don't know that he did that. I think that when he was at Jackson State, they were able to transition talent to that level that made sense, right? The talent that, per se was moving down a level, and there's a little bit more to choose from. It's a little different when you're competing against the best in college football, when you're competing against the Oregons and the Utahs and now in the Big 12, the Oklahoma States and the Kansas States, because you're not trying to get kids coming down. You're trying to find kids that are at the top and turn them into even better players, because we see other programs that they're going to be playing against are going to be in the same situation. So I think that it's curious and interesting to me that they kind of view it so much as like a personnel game. Like, we just got to find the guys to put in. I was struck by a comment he made last year after a really tough game where he was like, we need to get new offensive linemen. We need to get these guys out of here and get, better offensive linemen. Well, that's, I think, a very NFL pro approach to it. But the difference is, like, at the collegiate level, you're probably not going to get a fully formed offensive lineman. Like you're just probably not going to, especially in the transfer portal. You have to make it kind of happen yourself with your staff. And so I'm curious if he kind of is able to find that balance. We saw they replaced all 5 starting offensive linemen, 3 of whom were projected to come back and decided to leave via the transfer portal. So I think that, like you said, I mean, they I think are very much after sort of, I don't even want to call it quick fixes, because I think that there is a strategy to it, but I don't think that they're necessarily fully understanding of the balance of needing to both have some guys who are ready right now, like they have in Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter and some of these really good players that they have, but also balance that with, hey, by game 7, we need this freshman who wasn't very good in week 1 to be a better player through our coaching and development.
Yeah, I completely agree, because like you said, like, there's a balance, especially when you're dealing with 18 to 24-year-old kids, right? Like, it's not the NFL, it's not like you're coaching, Fred Warner, who's been playing football at a high level for, over a decade now. You've got 18, 19-year-old kids that have to develop. And, if you're going to play for Deion Sanders, I'm assuming that you have the tools to be developed. You just have to have someone who can actually do that. I want to transition now to the Big Ten, because it is a big season of change happening in the Big Ten, joined by Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports, a college football writer. Which new Big Ten team do you think is going to have the most success, and which one do you think is going to struggle the most?
Yeah, I think the success piece is easy. It's Oregon. Oregon is rolling right now, and maybe if Kalen DeBoer doesn't leave Washington and they don't have this transition class, they'd be more in contention. But Oregon might be the second or third best team in the country. I saw that Brett McMurphy over at the Action Network had him as his preseason number 1 team. I can't quite go that far. I think that Georgia and Ohio State are probably the top 2 in some order, but I think that Oregon is arguably that number 3 team. I mean, there's just no holes, frankly, on this roster. And, when you look the last couple of years, Mario Cristobal did a great job of recruiting and developing talent, retaining talent. Now Dan Landy's come in, put his own spin on it, hired a really good staff, and continue to add to it. And so this is, to me, a complete football team that is going to be up there. To me, Ohio State and Oregon are potentially, if things work out the way that I think, on a different level than the entire rest of the Big Ten. And I include Penn State in that. I include Michigan in their transition year in that. When you look at the teams that are going to struggle the most, I did mention Washington. I mean, they have 2 returning starters on the entire roster. It's a brutal situation just because they've lost so many players after going to the national title game last year. I think that they could have a bit of a 2023 TCU season where they go from title game to 5-7 just because of the amount of turnover. But I do think that the team that's going to struggle the most in general is going to be UCLA. I just don't know. After losing their coach in February, replacing him with a coach who has never really kind of been this coach at this level before in Deshaun Foster, I think that it's certainly an odd situation. They didn't have a lot of time to put a roster together because of the late coaching change. The transfer portal, had really been resolved for the most part by the time that they come in. And they also lose a couple of really key pieces, headlined by quarterback Dante Moore, who went to Oregon to actually be a backup quarterback. So it's just a lot of change and a lot of turnover with a program that already has plenty working against it at UCLA. And so I just think that the first year or two might be kind of brutal.
Yeah, UCLA is going to be it's going to be a rough year for them. If you didn't know, UCLA is located in Los Angeles, which is pretty nuts. Joined by Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports, a college football writer over there. Washington is there. I find them interesting. I like their new coach, Jed Fish. His Arizona program that he was at for 3 years. They're ranked. What do you think we can? I know you mentioned that Washington's only returning 2 starters, but what can we kind of expect from them under this new regime?
Well, I think that when you look at what they did at Arizona, and frankly, I think that their 3-year build at Arizona is one of the more underrated jobs that we've seen in the past 3 years. They go from 1-11 their first season to winning 10 games in year 3. It's a really impressive turnaround. But I mean, they did go through that 1-win season, right? So I don't think that Jed Fish is necessarily a turnkey type coach necessarily. And again, I mean, they are just so depleted from some of the transfers. It's not just guys like Michael Penix and Rome Odunze and Braylon Trice who went to the NFL. It's also guys like Jeremy Bernard at wide receiver. It's guys like Parker Brailsford, who might be the best center in college football heading into the year, transferred to Alabama with Kalen DeBoer. So it's just a comprehensive roster shift. And I think that if you ask me like year 2 or year 3, will they have this thing figured out? Absolutely. But it's just so much transition in year 1. They've got a quarterback in Will Howard. Oh, sorry, not Will Howard. Will Rogers, who's coming over from Mississippi State, who I'm not necessarily the hugest believer in. I think that he's kind of more of a basic air raid quarterback and might not be able to do some of the pro style stuff at a high level that Jed Fish was able to do at Arizona. And I just don't see the surefire playmakers on either the offensive or defensive side of the ball. So again, I think this could be a transition year, which anytime you lose your coach, it's going to be like that, but especially when you're losing a generation of players essentially. But I think that this first year could be tough, but that doesn't mean that I still have a lot of faith in this staff long term.
Okay, 2 more questions and I will let you go. What are your thoughts on Curt Cignetti at IU?
Yeah, I love the hire. When that hire was made, I almost couldn't believe it because it just made so much sense. And I feel like so much of the time with power conference teams, they just don't do the smart thing, it feels like. And Curt Cignetti is one of those coaches who has gone up from every level. He was a good coach at the Division II level. He was a good coach at the FCS level. He transitioned James Madison up, led one of the most impressive transition years that I think that you've ever really seen in college football. It's up there with Appalachian State a decade ago in the Sun Belt as well. And now, of course, he takes over at Indiana. And the thing I love about Curt Cignetti, too, is that, yes, he came through the small college ranks, but he also was an assistant coach and recruiting coordinator at Alabama under Nick Saban on his first staff. So, like, he has that perfect blend of experience that I think will be perfect for Indiana. Now, of course, Indiana has some challenges working against it, but I love the fact that he's been out there in the community, that he's been loud. He said, we're going to beat these teams, whether or not that's true in year 1 or 2. But I like a coach who's willing to fight for his program, I guess you can say. And they brought in a transfer class that I'm pretty excited about. A lot of former James Madison players coming with him who I think are really good. So, look, I mean, I think that this is the exact kind of hire that a school like Indiana should be making. And I feel like there was some concern about, like, well, he's 62. Is he old? I mean, I think that gives you plenty of runway to still have a very successful run. So I really like the hire, and I'm hoping that some of this energy, and mixed with, by the way, the end of the Tom Allen era, where he even makes this appeal and says, if we want to be serious and compete in football, we have to invest in NIL at a much higher level. I'm hoping that Curt Cignetti can be that coach who really wrangles everything together.
I'm with you. I like Curt Cignetti. He gives me plenty of stuff to talk about. Last question for you. What about Purdue? They've sold out for the season already. There appears to be a lot of momentum in West Lafayette despite a disappointing season last year. What are your thoughts on Ryan Walters and the Boilermakers heading into this year?
Yeah, it feels like they never got their feet underneath them last year, and again, I really am optimistic about that staff. I think Brian Walters is one of the smart young defensive minds in college football. And again, he had a bit of a transition situation too, like what we talked about at Washington or TCU, because so many guys left from that Big Ten West champion Purdue team from the year before under Jeff Brom. I think that this program is still trying to find their footing under Ryan Walters. Now, the credit that you have to give them is that they are developing some dudes. I look at Dylan Thieneman at safety. I mean, that's one of the best players in the entire country, one who's going to be talked about for preseason All-America recognition. And they brought in another top 150 safety as well to potentially shore up that position as well. I mean, people, I think, want to be around Ryan Walters. They want to play for him. And so, again, I'm curious what the transition is going to be like from year one to year two. I like the fact that Hudson Card's got another year in this system as well on offense. So I do think that things are pointing in the right direction, but I'm curious if it's going to be something that shows up this year.
Okay, fair enough. Shehan, thanks for your time, dude. You're awesome, man. We're gonna have to do this again.
I appreciate you having me. Have me back anytime.
Sweet, thanks, man. That is Shehan Jeyarajah. Sorry, I really struggled to pronounce his name, of CBS Sports. He's a college football writer. He's awesome. He's got all the insights, everything going on. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, issues with prime time at Colorado, Grand Theft Auto references, that's all coming your way here in about 4 minutes.
Often imitated, never duplicated. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Tickets, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Just had a great interview with Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports, a college football writer. You'll be able to listen to that on the podcast, the real Jonathan Smith podcast, when the show is over. Now, one of the topics of discussion in that interview was Colorado. A piece came out from Athlon Sports earlier this week discussing the Colorado football program and a lot of the issues that it has. And it has a lot of issues. Now, Deion Sanders is one of those polarizing figures in sports, just in general, okay? He's primetime, right? Like with a nickname like primetime, you have to be pretty polarizing. And with a nickname like primetime, you also have to be highly confident to walk around boasting about that nickname. Now, I'm a big believer that it's important to be confident in everything that you do. I'm a big believer that confidence can help people improve at whatever they're doing. A little bit of confidence goes a long way. Jerry West said it best, quote, "Confidence is a lot of this game or any game. If you don't think you can, you won't," end quote. We see this a lot in kids. Okay, when little Johnny scores a few baskets in his city basketball league, like he usually continues to score and he continues to shoot the ball because he finds confidence. Okay, we see the importance of confidence all the time in baseball. I am convinced that if you see a player make a diving play or any sort of awesome play out in the field, that their batting average is 1,000 on the next at bat, because you just get this boost of confidence from making a great defensive play. And then that, because you have more confidence, it leads to you feeling better at the plate, and then you get a hit. Confidence can elevate your game, and it's something that every athlete and every coach has to have. But pride, on the other hand, is the ultimate team killer, especially when it comes from your head coach. And Deion Sanders is arguably the most prideful coach in sports. He is all about himself for obvious reasons. Like with the nickname Primetime, you got to be all about yourself, right? And look, like the list of accolades for Deion Sanders it's a CVS receipt, really long. He played professional baseball. He's the best cornerback ever. Okay, in terms of him being a coach, he won a lot of games at Jackson State, but he's not going to win games at Colorado. It's not going to happen. The reason why he won games at Jackson State is because he's Deion Sanders. Let me ask you a question. If you have an option to go play for the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff for a coach that you've never heard of, or to go play at Jackson State for Deion freaking Sanders, the answer is easy. I'm going to go play for Deion Sanders. But once you move up into Power 5 football, the weight of your name isn't as heavy. It's like, hey, I can go play for Deion Sanders at 4-8 Colorado, or I can go play for, Steve Sarkisian at Texas, who just made a college football playoff and is one of the best offensive minds in the sport. Deion Sanders is in a position now where he can't just say, hey, I'm Deion Sanders, come play football for me. It's not how it works. And because of that, he now has to build a culture, something that Shehan, in that interview I just did with him, highlighted that Deion Sanders doesn't really care much for. And Deion Sanders, he has a point. That word culture, it gets thrown around a lot. Everyone has an opinion on what a good culture is. And look, I've never coached. I played college baseball. It's not really the same thing as high Division I sports. So I think I have a general idea of what culture is. I think that I know what a good culture is, but I can undoubtedly identify a bad one. Athlon Sports wrote an article earlier this week that came out interviewing former Colorado players, a lot of anonymous comments from players that have transferred out. Here's the thing. When players leave, it's usually not because they're happy, okay? Players leave because they're upset, so they can exaggerate things, but some of the things that are said in here are very alarming. When a former player says that the Colorado Buffs locker room is, quote, it's like a real-life Grand Theft Auto video game, end quote, I would argue that that's a red flag. That's probably not what a good culture sounds like. Okay, and if you read through the article, there are multiple stories about multiple fights in the locker room, guns in the locker room, Shehan Sanders slapping other players. It's just not good. It's terrible. It is a major red flag hearing all of these stories. And where there is smoke, there is likely fire. And the one who started this fire is Deion Sanders with his pride. When your response to players leaving your program is quote, they aren't suited for prime time, end quote, that shows your pride is getting in the way. Nothing is ever Deion Sanders' fault. And that mindset has ruined some of his best players. Shehan Sanders, starting quarterback for Colorado, going to be one of the first quarterbacks off the board in this next year's NFL draft. Really good player. Reportedly, he slapped one of his teammates multiple times because he wasn't playing well. It's not okay. Your head coach has to step in and say, hey, don't touch him. Seriously. Travis Hunter, the two-way star. I don't know if you can be a star if you're on a 4-8 football team, but we can call Travis Hunter a star, I guess. Travis Hunter called out his offensive line on a live stream for being one of the worst in the country. Like, seriously, like you can't enable and allow your players to do that, even if they're really good. You have to set up some sort of boundary, especially for 18 to 22-year-olds, because let's be honest, 18 to 22-year-old kids, not usually the smartest people in the world. Okay, and I think that the frustrating part of all of this is that Deion Sanders should be an excellent football coach. He should be one of the best college football coaches in the country from both a recruiting standpoint and a development of players standpoint. Now, look, I think it's hard for great players to become great coaches. It's really difficult. It just is because, let's be honest, Deion Sanders, he's the best defensive back ever. Whoever he coaches isn't going to be as good as he is, and some guys can't really grasp that. Either way, though, Deion Sanders played in the NFL for a long time. He helped develop Shehan Sanders from the time he was a kid all the way up into how to be an excellent quarterback, where he was one of the better guys coming out of high school. Okay, he helped his other son become a good safety. Okay, like he knows how football works. He does. He should be one of the better developmental coaches in all of college football. They should have the best secondary in the country every single year, but they don't, because Deion Sanders doesn't take the time to develop the talents of these kids. He doesn't. He's also one of the most charismatic people ever. He is extremely charismatic. People tend to just gravitate towards him. He's interesting. He should be an excellent recruiter. And the players on his roster should want to play for him because he's so charismatic and because he knows football so well after having played in the NFL for a long time. The issue is his pride gets in the way of it. And instead of building players up, he tears them down. He expects for players to be like himself, great immediately. And that's just not how athletes operate. That's just not how it is. It's not normal for 18-year-olds to show up on campus and immediately be amazing, especially in this day and age of college sports where seniors are 23, 24, 25 years old. It's a 7-year age gap. Okay, that's just not the way that college sports works. If a player leaves the University of Colorado or doesn't live up to expectations, it's because they aren't built for prime time, apparently. There is never any admission on Deion Sanders' part of potentially failing that player. There's never any admittance that the 8 losses that Colorado suffered last year could actually be Deion's fault. No, it was his players' fault, not the great Deion Sanders. It could never be his fault. And here's the thing, when you look at college sports, anyone, college basketball, college track and field, college hockey, college football, whichever one you want to look at, the best coaches in the country take the blame for losses. and they figure out what they can do better to help their players. Nick Saban, great friend of Deion Sanders. You would have thought that, Deion Sanders would have picked this up from Nick Saban. I guess not. Nick Saban took the blame for everything. He never threw his players under the bus. He never did it. Kirby Smart never throws his players under the bus. He always takes the blame. Just keep heading down the list of the best coaches. They take the blame and they do everything they can to protect their players, because in college, your players are young and they're emotional. Okay, you get a different guy every week when you're coaching 18, 19, 20-year-olds. Okay, they swing back and forth emotionally. And if you're coaching them, you have to know how to step in and keep them even keel. And part of that is saying things are your fault, even if they aren't. The best coaches in the country do that. Meanwhile, Deion Sanders does the opposite. He blames losses on his players and seems to not care about his players at all based on this story from Athlon Sports. It's his pride. It's in the way. Nothing can be his fault because he's Deion Sanders. Prime time, baby. And that's why he's never going to win at Colorado. He's too much about himself and not enough about his team. Top 10 Tuesday. I know it's Wednesday. Didn't have time to do it yesterday. That's coming up top of the hour, 11 o'clock. Can't wait to do it. It's going to be a lot of fun. We come back here, though, here in about 4 minutes. Injuries at Colts camp and a look around some of the other training camps in the NFL. Got all that coming your way here in about 4 minutes.
Welcome back to The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you guys are having a nice Wednesday, a nice hump day. Top 10 Tuesday on a Wednesday. Coming up here in about 20 minutes, Top 10 Tuesday. Can't wait for this one. Should be good. Should be fun, as they always are. Josh Downs of the Indianapolis Colts goes down with an injury because of course he does. This has just been the week of injuries at training camp. Like it truly is incredible. Josh Downs, he goes down with a hurt ankle. Shout out to Nick Cross. Really appreciate that. Christian McCaffrey got hurt earlier in the week. He's going to miss all of the preseason, which isn't a surprise. He wasn't going to play in the preseason anyway. Puka Nacua hurt his knee. Noah Fant is hurt. And it's only Wednesday. We have more training camp injuries coming up. Like they're coming. And they're going to continue to pile up because this is just what happens when you play football. Guys get hurt. That's why depth is extremely important. Okay? Like the deepest team usually wins. Okay, that's not true. The healthiest team usually wins. Okay, that's part of why I'm hesitant to pick the Kansas City Chiefs to win a third straight Super Bowl, because your injury luck just has to be really good for 3 straight years. Okay, and the Chiefs have stayed really healthy over these past couple of years. Travis Kelce's played in most of the games. Patrick Mahomes has played in all of their games, if I remember correctly. And just, the list goes on. They've just done a great job of staying healthy. And yeah, Josh Downs going down, that is not what you want. But there is a bright side in this. More reps for Adonai Mitchell, baby. Let's go. Put him in the slot and let him go to work. Okay. Look, I think he's going to be fine. We've got, 5 weeks until the start of, the regular season. By the time, unless he broke his ankle, which I doubt is what happened, then he should be fine. Okay, if he sprained it, he should hopefully be back in time. Either way, I'm not too worried about it yet until we hear some sort of report about the injury. As of right now, all we know is that it's a lower leg injury, and that's really it. He had to be helped off the field. Apparently, he couldn't put any weight on the leg, but we'll see what winds up happening. Now, in more semi-Colts news, Justin Simmons, my guy, the guy that I really want the Colts to sign because they desperately need a free safety. Playing Nick Cross or converting linebacker Nico Harrison to play safety is not the answer. Justin Simmons is. Now, with that being said, Adam Schefter of ESPN, he reported this morning that Justin Simmons is in New Orleans visiting the Saints. Don't freak out. That's more for me than it is for you, because I'm pretty adamant that this is the guy that the Colts need, because Nick Cross hasn't panned out. Former 3rd-round pick heading into year 3. He's been bad. He was bad at the end of last year. Okay, converting a linebacker to safety that hasn't played free safety since high school isn't the answer either. Justin Simmons is. And he's in New Orleans. He's visiting the Saints. This is normal. It's normal, okay? When guys are free agents, they're allowed to go wherever, see whatever, and do whatever. Even though, to be fair, Justin Simmons said that he wants to go somewhere where he can win. So I don't know why he would even consider going to New Orleans. But hey, I digress. It's not time for me to roast the Saints. It's time for me to roast the idea that cap space matters. If the Saints sign Justin Simmons over the Colts, I never want to hear about cap space ever again. The New Orleans Saints are constantly struggling with cap space. They're having to rearrange things heading into every offseason. Okay? Because, look, they may maneuver the cap better than anyone else. Okay? And Colts fans, Indianapolis people love to harp on the amount of cap space that they have. Look, having cap space is not a good thing. It means you're not using all of your resources. That's what it means. The Colts have about $25 million in cap space, almost $15 million more dollars available compared to the New Orleans Saints. If this becomes a bidding war, you know what? It shouldn't even get to that point. The Colts should just come in and be like, hey, whatever the Saints offer you, we're going to offer you way more than them. because we need a free safety. We do. We need a free safety the same way that I need coffee in the morning. Okay, it's a necessity. It's something that has to happen at some point or things get really bad. It is, man. If I don't have my coffee, I get really grumpy, start biting heads off. It makes me feel better. I don't know. I need that caffeine. Just like the Colts need a guy who can play single high, okay? And Justin Simmons is undoubtedly that guy. If he ends up playing anywhere else that is not in a Colts jersey at Lucas Oil Stadium, then this will be another major debacle by Chris Ballard. Okay, like when it comes to free agency, man, he's been horrendously bad. Raekwon Davis, that's what we have to show for free agency this year. When there were guys like Christian Wilkins available, and there is currently a guy like Justin Simmons available. It never should have even gotten to this point. The Colts should have offered Justin Simmons a contract immediately. They should have been like, oh, wow, one of the 10 best safeties in the NFL is available on the market. Let's go get him. Because, Nick Cross wasn't very good at the end of last year. Okay? At some point, Casper Chris, he's got to show up. He's got to show up and make some sort of big free agency signing. Okay, I understand the idea of wanting to sign your own. I understand it. Okay, like if you draft a guy and they're just as good as some free agent, sure, extend him, keep him, whatever. A guy that's in your building, understands the coaching staff, just understands the way that your organization wants to operate. That makes sense. But when you look at your roster, and there are guys in free agency better than the players that you have, you should go get them. Forget signing your own at that point, because the goal shouldn't be to sign your own. The goal should be to win football games. And if the Colts decide to not sign Justin Simmons, they will lose football games because of that decision. You have to be aggressive. The best teams in sports are aggressive. The 49ers, very aggressive. And going out and adding players. Trading 3 first-round picks to grab Trey Lance. Probably not the best example, but moves like that are what allow teams to rebuild and become a good football team. Okay, the Los Angeles Rams trading first-round pick after first-round pick to acquire Matthew Stafford and Jalen Ramsey and those dudes to get to a Super Bowl and eventually win it. Okay, aggressive moves win. We saw it with that Super Bowl rebuild. You have to be aggressive. You have to go out and search and find good players, because that's ultimately how you win. Like, coaching is great. I think Nick Sirianni, not Nick Sirianni, Shane Steichen, excuse me. I think Shane Steichen is going to do an excellent job with Anthony Richardson this year, because coaching is important. But here's the thing. What's more important than coaches? Players. You have to have good players. Okay? And Chris Ballard needs to, get off of his hands and go out and sign Justin Simmons. It is imperative for this Colts team. Moving on. I don't know if you watch Hard Knocks. I watched Hard Knocks last night. Episode 1 came out. I've got a couple notes from it. I think the biggest note that I had was Matt Eberflus. There's like a 5-minute clip in there where it's Nick Saban, retired Nick Saban, who didn't have the best NFL career in the world, even though if the Miami Dolphins, doctors had just been a little bit smarter, if they had just cleared Drew Brees, Nick Saban would have gotten to coach Drew Brees and he never would have gone back to Alabama. That's beside the point. Nick Saban, however, didn't win a ton of games in the NFL. He won some games, but there's a reason why he went back to Alabama, right? So he's sitting there with Matt Eberflus, and Matt Eberflus is just taking all these notes from Nick Saban, even though Nick Saban's retired. He hasn't coached in the NFL for a long time. And it was all about, here's kind of how you deal with young quarterbacks. Here's why young quarterbacks in the NFL fail, because of expectations. And you got that guy in Caleb Williams out there where expectations are through the roof. The whole conversation is fascinating. But what I find even more fascinating is Matt Eberflus just writing down every single word that Nick Saban was saying. It speaks to the genius that Nick Saban is, or I guess Well, no, I am going to say is because he's still a genius, and I'm interested to see what Alabama looks like without him this year. I think it also revealed a side of Nick Saban that we didn't really get to see when he was at Alabama. It was kind of the relational side, like all the clips that you see of Nick Saban are of him yelling at players, and they're bleeping stuff out because he's letting a dude have it, and like in that moment, you get this peek into how he dealt with players on a personal basis. And it was really cool. I found it fascinating. Hey, speaking of the Bears and Matt Eberflus, I think the other thing that I think kind of popped, I think the thing that people are going to talk about is Caleb Williams struggling a little bit during camp. It's not abnormal for rookies. Not abnormal at all. If Caleb Williams has, if he struggles during different points of this season, not abnormal. It's not for rookie quarterbacks to come in and struggle. Hopefully we get to see Caleb Williams at some point during the preseason because it's the same thing with Anthony Richardson. It's hard to be good at a thing that you've never done before. Or in Anthony Richardson's case, it's hard to play quarterback in the NFL at a high level when you've only thrown 84 passes. Okay, so hopefully we see Caleb Williams at some point during these preseason games because I think everyone is highly intrigued by what he's going to bring to the table in Chicago. Look, he's probably going to be the best quarterback in Chicago football history. And that's not saying much because Jay Cutler's probably the best. You could argue that. So there's that. My last takeaway from Hard Knocks last night before we head to break. A makeover can do a lot for your image, man. Matt Eberflus looks cool. He looks cool. He sounds not cool. He sounds kind of lame, to be honest. But hey, he looks cool, and that's what matters. Okay, young coaches are running rampant in the NFL. It seems like every guy that gets hired is like under the age of 40. Okay, that used to not be the case. Most of the guys that got hired had really paid their dues. They've been a coordinator for, over a decade, and they were like offensive assistant tape managers and all that kind of stuff for a long time. But now these teams are becoming more and more willing to kind of pass out these contracts to younger head coaches. And Eberflus feels a lot younger now with this new slicked back hair and the beard and the sunglasses. And like that really matters. It does. I think it helps these guys relate to players. And more importantly, I think it helps them keep their jobs because there's just something about it right now. There's this new young coach in the NFL thing that owners and the media especially really like. And this Matt Eberflus makeover, I think, really helps him accomplish that. Coming up here in about 5 minutes, Top 10 Tuesday on a Wednesday. Can't wait to do it. Top 10 NFL teams entering the preseason. Okay, this isn't my official Super Bowl prediction or anything like that. It's just kind of how I feel as of right now. I'll give an official prediction probably September 4th. That's a Wednesday, the day before the NFL season starts. But I've got a little sneak peek into what that list might look like when we come back here in about 5 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, maybe that's via Twitter. You can watch the live stream at __ Jonathan Smith. Also follow us. Also follow the station on Twitter, Indy Sports Ticket at Ticket 1430. Maybe you're listening via that Indy Sports Ticket app, where you can stream my show every day from 10 to noon, or you can stream the Dan Dockett Show from noon to 3. Maybe you're watching on YouTube, the best place to watch Indy Sports Ticket. Head over there, subscribe. Really trying to build that up. Join the chat, join the comment section. If I say something you disagree with, let me know about it. That is the place to do it. You can also text our text line at 317-228-1430 if you would like to text in as well. Now, Top 10 Tuesday on a Wednesday. We had two great interviews yesterday with my guy, Zach Hicks, and my other guy, Zach Gray. Didn't have time to squeeze it in. So this is Top 10 Tuesday on a Wednesday. When the NFL season starts, this will be every Top 10 Tuesday. The 10 best teams in the NFL. Okay, so here we go. Starting with number 10, heading really into the preseason. It starts tomorrow night. We have preseason games tomorrow night, baby. More of them. That Hall of Fame game doesn't really even feel like a preseason game because it happens so much earlier than everyone else. But hey, whatever. So Top 10 Tuesday on a Wednesday, the best NFL teams. Starting at number 10. Number 10, I put the Miami Dolphins. This is not homerism for the new listeners. Yes, I am a Miami Dolphins fan working in Indianapolis. And yes, I am wearing an Arkansas Razorback shirt on stream. That is not the point. Top 10 Tuesday is the point here. Miami Dolphins at number 10. I think we know exactly what we're getting with the Miami Dolphins for as long as Tua is their quarterback, who they just gave a lot of money to, right? Top 5 quarterback, in terms of payments per year in the league. They're going to continue to be one of the best offensive teams in the NFL. There's a lot of speed on that side of the ball. Jalen Waddle, Braxton Berrios, Tyreek Hill. Okay, those dudes can move. Mike McDaniel, one of the better young, bright offensive minds in the NFL. But because Tua is their quarterback, they're limited. There are some concerns on the defensive side of the ball with defensive tackle Christian Wilkins leaving. Okay, they still have multiple edge rushers that can really get after the quarterback. One of the best secondaries in the NFL as well on the back end between Javon Holland and Jalen Ramsey and those guys. They're going to be a tough out in warm weather unless, if you're playing in Kansas City in January, which is probably where they're going to end up at some point, on the road trying to beat a much better Kansas City team in, negative 4-degree weather, they aren't going to win those games because I love Tua, but he's just not built for those types of games. Number 9, Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles suffered a historic fall from grace last year, losing 6 of their last 7 games. They started so well. It was like, oh, Super Bowl run, here we come. Jalen Hurts, they look good. But then you started to really watch, and you're like, do they look good? And then they lose 6 of their last 7 games. That slump is incredibly hard to ignore, but they are led by quarterback Jalen Hurts, who had an MVP-type year a couple years ago. And then Shane Steichen left, and he wasn't good last year. But hey, that's not the point of this either. But Philadelphia still remains one of the better rosters in the NFL. They still remain highly talented. They bring in Saquon Barkley. That's going to pay dividends down the stretch. Just keeping, Jalen Hurts away from having to use his legs too much until the playoffs. Okay, being able to turn it around, hand it off to Saquon is going to be a big deal for them. To be honest, though, I don't have a ton of faith in Nick Sirianni. That's why I have them all the way down at 9. New coordinators. I don't know if that's really going to fix it. They better be great at their job, but we'll see if that happens or not. Number 8, the Buffalo Bills. Now, I've got another team slightly higher than them, the Bengals. I'll just go ahead and unveil that one. And I think that Buffalo and Cincinnati are very similar in terms of their success is very much tied to their quarterback. And in the case of the Buffalo Bills, that's fine for them because they have Josh Allen, the second best quarterback in the NFL, a guy that if he didn't have to consistently play against Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, would have potentially won a Super Bowl by now. Now, there are some concerns with this Buffalo team. Okay. There's a lack of receiving options in Buffalo. That's a concern. I don't know if it's true or not. Okay. They have multiple good tight ends. I think that Keon Coleman's going to be a stud. It's like, oh, but Stephon Diggs left. They didn't really utilize him that much at the end of 2023. And, stained in my memory is the image of him dropping a very important pass in that playoff game against the Kansas City Chiefs last year. So I don't really know if they're losing all that much. Okay, they really went away from Diggs at the end of last year. They really, really did. They developed a run game, which should help. Okay, like you can't ask Josh Allen to wear the cape the entire game. That's not a fair standard to ask him to be Superman for 60 straight minutes for 17 straight weeks. So the fact that Joe Brady took over as offensive coordinator, developed a run game, is going to be very influential for this Buffalo Bills team. They're going to win the AFC East and probably host a couple of playoff games. They're that good. Number 7. I don't like that I have them at 7, but I think that it's fair. The Green Bay Packers. They came on strong at the end of last year. From Thanksgiving on, that was a great football team. Okay, Jordan Love figured some things out. Okay, Matt LaFleur, I like him. I think he's one of the better head coaches in the NFL. Don't think he's, Sean McVay or Andy Reid or anybody, but he is a good coach. It's Green Bay. They always have a good offensive line. Defensively, they should be solid once again. There's a lot to like in Green Bay, but I wouldn't buy in on everything that they've got going on. Number 6, the Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Cool, he's back, baby. Or Cool Joe? Joe Cool, however you say his nickname. He's back. And when you have a top 4 quarterback in the NFL return to your lineup, believe it or not, you're going to be a lot better. Okay? I'm super excited to see what Cincinnati looks like. They're going to score points. And with Trey Hutchinson on the defensive line coming off the edge, they're going to get after the passer. Can they protect Joe Burrow? I don't know. That seems to always be the question. But if he can stay on his feet, he and Jamar Chase are going to light up the scoreboard. T. Higgins as well. And, Trey Hutchinson was awesome last year, 17 sacks. He's dominant. And so, when you get after the quarterback and you have a great quarterback yourself, you're going to win a lot of games. And Cincinnati's going to do that consistently this year. Number 5, Detroit, one of the best rosters in the league. Dan Campbell, the most disrespected coach in the league, without a doubt. Okay, that dude coaches his butt off. Getting your players to play hard for you is an important skill that coaches have to have. Deion Sanders doesn't have that skill. Anyway, if Jared Goff wasn't their quarterback, then I'd pick him to win the NFC. But very similar to the Dolphins, Jared Goff limits what the Lions can do. He does. But outside of him, they're dominant on both fronts. Okay, they get after the quarterback and they protect the quarterback probably better than any other team in the NFL. Okay, they have 2 great coordinators that both turned down head coaching opportunities to stay in Detroit, which speaks to the fact that they probably have a pretty good culture. Okay, and this young team, because this team is very young, got a nice little taste of the playoffs last year. Okay, had a chance to win the NFC. I mean, like they were right there. And then, they collapsed. It wasn't good. But let's just forget about that. Detroit, 5, great roster, good head coach, good coordinators. They're going to be one of the better teams in the league this year. Number 4, the Baltimore Ravens. They've got they probably have the best roster in the AFC. Like just top to bottom, they have the best roster. Okay, Lamar Jackson, 2nd, 3rd best quarterback in the NFL, 4th best quarterback in the NFL, excuse me. He's the 4th best quarterback in the league. That helps. I think John Harbaugh's a great coach. Okay, John, not Jim, the cheater. Right? They've got a slew of good defenders as well. They're going to be physical. They're going to be mean. They're going to be nasty. They're going to run the football at a high level. And look, if you can run the football, then you're going to win a lot of games. And we know that is for sure going to happen with the Baltimore Ravens. They're going to line it up. They're going to run it right at people, bringing in Derrick Henry. There couldn't be a better situation for Derrick Henry. Okay, the Ravens are going to be so tough to beat this year. Number 3 on the list, the San Francisco 49ers. They are likely going to lose Brandon Ayuk. which is concerning. He's a major part of their offense. I like Debo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle. Like those guys, they kind of feel like the core, right? Where like if you lose one of those three guys, you're concerned and you're kind of like, Brandon Ayuk, whatever. I think he's highly important. He really stretches the defense with his speed. And look, he's likely not going to be there this year. It looks like the 49ers are going to trade him at some point. Their core is a year older. Trent Williams is 36. When does he take a step back? George Kittle is 30. Debo Samuel's 28. Fred Warner's 27. Dre Greenlaw is coming off of a torn Achilles. Like they've gotten older, and it feels like with their division being much better this year, it's going to be a tough road back to the Super Bowl. But look, I've got them third. This is one of the best rosters in the NFL. Okay, if they return to the Super Bowl, I don't think anyone would be surprised. I definitely wouldn't be. I've got them third. Come on now. Number 2, here's my shocker. The Los Angeles Rams are the second best team in the NFC. And if I had to pick someone to win the NFC right now, I would pick the Los Angeles Rams. They have the best coach in the NFC. They have the best quarterback in the NFC. Okay, I know that they lost some pieces in the offseason. I know Aaron Donald retired. But as long as but they're going to be a juggernaut on the offensive side of the ball. They are. They added several pieces defensively, really shored up that defensive line through the draft, signed a couple important free agents for the back end of their defense. Like the Rams are going to be one of the better teams in the NFL. Get on the bandwagon right now. And then, of course, at number 1, I have the Kansas City Chiefs. If I had to pick a Super Bowl champ today, I'd pick Kansas City because I've just kind of reached a point where I'm like, I'm not betting against them. I'm not. They have the best coach and the best quarterback in the NFL. I know they lost some pieces in the offseason, but as long as they have the guy with the curly hair and the Kermit the Frog voice, I'm not picking anyone else. And if you'll notice on this list, I don't have a single AFC South team listed as one of the 10 best teams in the NFL heading into the heart of the preseason. There is no reason why the Colts shouldn't compete to win the division this year. I know we're concerned about Josh Downs based off of what I'm seeing on Twitter. Downs has an ankle injury. We're not sure of the severity. Okay. And yeah, I mean, Shane Steichen was asked about it. He was like, we got to be smarter, all that kind of stuff. James Boyd sending out a tweet that Anthony Richardson slid. Oh my goodness. You know, on a day where something terrible happened, Josh Downs got hurt. Something good happened. Anthony Richardson slid. That is so incredibly important. Okay, back to what I was talking about, though. If Anthony Richardson can stay healthy, there's no reason why the Indianapolis Colts should not compete to win this division this year. Okay, if Gardner Minshew makes a throw last year, Colts go 10-7, they win the division, everyone's rejoicing. It's great. But he didn't. So now they're trying to find their way back into the playoffs. And look, they should be able to do it. I know people are high on the Texans. People are high on CJ Stroud and everything that they got going on over there in Houston. Look, they're going to be good. They are. Okay? Like they have a good coach and they have a good quarterback. But in a year where the Colts had a backup quarterback play every single quarter but 12, they almost won the division. And CJ Stroud had a really good year last year. So AFC South should be competitive. There's no reason why the Colts shouldn't have a chance at winning that division. Coming back here in about 4 minutes, Team USA crushed Brazil yesterday. Put it on them. They play Serbia tomorrow in the semifinal of the Olympic basketball tournament. Can't wait to get into all that. That's coming your way here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Just breezing through the show today. Great interview to start the show on college football. Just a great time with Shehan. I mean, just he writes for college football for CBS Sports, does a great job. Great interview with him. You can listen to that interview when the podcast comes out just a wee bit later. Talked a little bit of Colorado football, gave you my top 10 Tuesday, 10 best teams in the NFL heading into the preseason, because that starts tomorrow night. Talked a little Hard Knocks. About to talk a little Olympic USA basketball. Big win yesterday over Brazil. I mean, just absolutely dominant. But before I do, breaking news, exciting news. Some of the best news, if you're a Colts fan, that you will hear today, and may make you feel even a little bit better about how Josh Downs got hurt, messed up his ankle. We don't know the severity of the injury quite yet. Shout out to Nick Cross, right? We are now not only worried about the free safety position because of Nick Cross, but we are also worried about the wide receiver position because of Nick Cross. So, Nick, thank you so much for that. But back to the good news. Anthony Richardson slid. Anthony Richardson slid, baby. That's the best news I might hear today. Seriously. It's so incredibly important for the Colts' success this season that Anthony Richardson knows and understands how to slide, which it's really weird. Not every quarterback knows how to slide. Okay, I don't know if you guys remember, Robert Griffin III got hurt sliding. He didn't know how to do it, and when he did it, he messed up his knee more. Okay, so you have to, it's an important thing, and it's so good that Anthony Richardson apparently knows how to do it. I just need to see him do it in a real game when, a real defender is bearing down on him. Okay? It's important. It has to happen, because if it doesn't, man, the Colts are going to be in trouble. The Colts are going to be in trouble if Anthony Richardson can't stay healthy. Now, let's talk about something where there's no trouble whatsoever. Olympic basketball, Team USA, getting after it, just pummeling, absolutely destroying Brazil yesterday. Game wasn't close. They won by 40. Okay, I barely watched any of it. It was pretty apparent that the game was in hand from the jump. I've already kind of talked about how I find some of the Team USA games incredibly boring. I really do. I don't know, that might be un-American of me to say, but they're just so much better than everyone else that you sit back and you watch and you're just like, yeah, they're really good. Dare I say, this is the best, Olympic team we've had since 92, the Dream Team, the original. I don't know if I'd say that they're better than the original Dream Team. You could certainly make a case for that, though, but this is definitely the best team we've seen since that 92 Dream Team. And I think we saw it on full display yesterday. This team just doesn't have any holes. They have size where they need size. They have plenty of shooting, plenty of ball handlers, a couple really good point guards to distribute the basketball. Like this team, there's no holes whatsoever. And, everyone for Team USA played great against Brazil yesterday. It's I don't think that they could play much better. They shot 58% from the floor as a team and 48% from three. They played good defense. They checked a lot of the boxes. It was absolute domination from start to finish. Like Brazil just, it was pretty apparent from the jump that they just don't have the dudes, right? They just don't have the NBA bodies. They don't have the size or the length to really hang with what Team USA has. And because this team is, without any holes, they can really just kind of morph and pick on your weaknesses. They really can. And that's what they did. That's what they did to Brazil yesterday for 40 minutes. Just ripped their souls out. Okay. Absolute domination from start to finish. Now they're set up to play against Serbia in the semifinals. And I think people are going to relax. Like, it's just Serbia. Beat them by 26 the last time we played them. put up 110 points, won 110-84, all that kind of stuff. And the reason why they're playing Serbia is because Serbia has the best player in the world. And he just kind of took over against Australia and was like, yeah, we're sorry, Patty Mills. Sorry, Josh Giddey. I'm the best basketball player in the world. And because of that, we're going to win this game. And that's what he did. He played 39 out of a possible 45 minutes against Australia. And we're going to see something eerily similar against Team USA. Wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if we saw Nikola Jokic go wire to wire and not come off the floor, because he has to be on the floor for Serbia to have any sort of chance. In that, 26-point win over Serbia the last time Team USA played them, last month in July 28th, not even that long ago. Nikola Jokic, his plus minus was 0, and when he was off the floor, they got outscored by 26. You blinked, and that was kind of it. And so because of that, we're going to see just a ton of Jokic in this game, which is concerning because he will be the best player on the floor. Okay, and I think that's going to be different. The other thing that will be different is I don't think Team USA is going to shoot the ball like they did against Serbia the first time that they played them. When they played Serbia, they shot 62% from the floor, which is absurd. That is incredible. Like that doesn't happen. Okay. And more absurdly, they shot 56% from 3, and they took almost 40 of them. Look, even if you're the best shooting team in the world, like that's not happening again. Especially in back-to-back games coming off of that shooting performance against Brazil. Like at some point, like the law of averages happens and you miss some shots that you should make. Okay, like they're not shooting the ball that well again. So I do think that tomorrow's game, 3:30 against Serbia, semifinal, chance to advance to the gold medal game on the line. I do think it's going to be a little bit closer than what people are expecting. I haven't checked the line on it yet, but it's probably in the 20s because look, Team USA from a talent perspective far outweighs everybody. Okay. And the parts that I have enjoyed of watching Team USA, it's really cool just seeing how happy all these guys are. Shout out to Kevin Durant, probably my second favorite player growing up behind the one and only Dirk Nowitzki. Love that guy. But like when it comes, just to him and everything that to Kevin Durant, like becoming the all-time leading scorer in Team USA basketball history, men or women. I mean, they just look so happy. Like they all seem to enjoy playing together, which is just a really interesting thing, right? Because it's a room full of guys that are kind of the alphas of their teams, whether it's Tatum in Boston or Durant in Phoenix or LeBron in LA or Bam in Miami, all that kind of stuff. And just to see them come together and figure out a way to play together it's really cool, and we get to see different parts of these guys' games. Like, for example, Devin Booker yesterday, he looks like Kentucky Devin Booker. Like, I'm not really going to dribble that much. I'm not going to post up. I'm just going to run around, run off screens, and catch and shoot and score 18 points because that's what he did yesterday. And it was impressive. And you forget that these guys have those skills because the NBA game, it's like, Devin Booker, you're the best player on the floor right now for us. Here is the basketball. Go do whatever you want. That's so much of what the NBA game is, and it's fun to watch these guys kind of adapt to these different rules. And yeah, it's sick. And watching the other teams play as well, I find really fascinating. France beat Canada yesterday, which is a huge deal. Canada they were the second favorites behind Team USA to win the gold, right? And Wemby didn't play great offensively yesterday, but defensively, man, like you sit back and you watch him, and like he's already one of the 10 best players in the world. Okay, I say that with the utmost confidence. He's the best defender in the world. Okay, he has enough offensive skill as well that he belongs in the names of the 10 best players on the planet. When he really figured it out during the NBA season, it was towards the end of the year when people were like, I don't want to watch the Spurs. they're going to win like 18 games. Why would I want to watch them? The answer is because Wemby was on the floor. But anyway, if you saw him then it was absolutely apparent that this dude was incredible. And once again, look, he didn't score the ball great yesterday, but he was so impactful on the defensive end of the floor. I mean, like he's going to go down as the best defender in the history of basketball. Like he's that influential just with the length and the speed and the quickness to recover. Like the dude is insane. Like Canada, a team filled with good NBA players like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jamal Murray. Yeah, they only scored 10 points in the first quarter. Okay, Wemby owned and dominated that end of the floor without Rudy Gobert behind him most of the time. Okay, Wemby, truly an amazing player, and I hope they beat Germany. I want to see Wemby and France take on Team USA. That is the team that I told people to be wary of before the Olympics even started, because France is huge. Wemby, Gobert, they have a ton of size. And look, you can find good guards everywhere. Okay, like that's the one thing, just like sitting back and watching. It's like, geez, there are a lot of really good basketball players that are like 6'3", 6'4" across the world. There are a lot of them. So I would love to see France take on Team USA, but France, like they have to beat Germany, who won the FIBA World Championships last year, led by the Wagner brothers, Mo and Franz Wagner, both playing for the Orlando Magic. Dennis Schroeder played a big role in that team as well. He's playing in Toronto. He is their best guard, but they're fun to watch as well. So France, Germany, that's a rematch. That was a really good game that happened during the group stage. So Olympic basketball continues on tomorrow. Can't wait for those games. Once again, Team USA taking on Serbia at 3:30. France plays Germany at 11:30. I'm going to be locked in to that game. The other thing that I'm locked into is the NFL and training camp stories and injuries. Josh Downs going down earlier today with an ankle injury. Don't know the severity of it quite yet. That is from Shane Steichen. As soon as we get a report, I promise me or Dan, we will be the first ones to enlighten you guys on that. Other news, Anthony Richardson slid today. That's kind of a big deal, right? Need him to stay healthy. But the other thing that I've really kind of been keeping an eye on is the Giants. Like the teams in New York this year, I just find incredibly fascinating. Like the Jets are going through all the Aaron Rodgers, this is terrible stuff, because dealing with Aaron Rodgers has got to be one of the worst jobs in the world. Prima donna, doesn't communicate very well. If he's upset, he's going to let people know about it instead of just going behind closed doors and dealing with whatever the problem is. So, yeah, man, it's brutal. But the Giants as well, I find incredibly fascinating. Okay, because they're back. It's, it's Daniel Jones and the Giants, and they were awful last year. Brian Daboll, I think, is one of the better coaches in the NFL. His job may or may not be on the line. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw Bill Belichick as the head coach of the Giants next year. Wouldn't be surprised by that in the slightest. And his job is dependent upon Daniel Jones playing well. And the Giants and the Lions have been doing the whole, practicing together thing, and it's led to a million fights. A million. Malik Neighbors is like shoving dudes, and then blows are being exchanged, and it's great. And while this is happening, Daniel Jones, corny looking white dude from Duke, because let's just be honest, that's kind of what he looks like. This corny looking white guy from Duke runs and joins the fight. And I find it so incredibly important that he does that. It's things like that that help you win a locker room and get your teammates to buy into you. Okay? This is something that Russell Wilson would never do. Russell Wilson would never step in to the middle of a fight between teammates, or even with a fight between other teams. Okay? It is so incredibly important that your team rallies around your quarterback. And when I look at the Indianapolis Colts and I listen to all these different press conferences, and I listen to the way that that the Colts discuss Anthony Richardson, this locker room is behind him. They are bought into everything that he brings to the table. There seems to be a profound amount of faith in Anthony Richardson and his ability to lead this team. And I'm excited. I'm excited for Colts football. Josh Downs going down, not what you want to hear today, but Laiatu Latu reportedly continued to shine. And hopefully Justin Simmons is in that Colts blue uniform sooner rather than later. Now, something else that I will not be buying into is the Colorado Buffaloes. Okay, issues. There's issues in Colorado. There's issues in Boulder. Primetime is messing things up. I've got that story when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
If a hurricane is coming, is your community ready?
How does a community prepare for the unexpected?
By planning ahead. Taking action now can help minimize the level of storm damage.
So we don't have to keep rebuilding my school after a storm?
And much more. Planners are looking at how to make our community and others safer, so we can get back to our lives more quickly.
Like magic?
It's not magic, it's good planning.
Learn more about how planners are working to help communities at planning.org. Brought to you by the American Planning Association.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in. No matter how you are tuning in, whether that's on Twitter. Follow me there at __ Jonathan Smith. You can also watch the live stream there. Follow the station there on Twitter as well at Ticket 1430 for your latest news and updates. Maybe you're listening on the Indie Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you get your apps, the App Store, the Google Play Store. You can also stream the Dan Dockett Show there every day from noon to 3. Maybe you're watching on YouTube. The best way to watch, in all honesty. Head over there, Indie Sports Ticket, subscribe, tune in over there, join the chat. Let your voice be heard about the various things that I say. You can also text the Indie Sports Ticket text line at 317-228-1430. Moving on now, Colorado, the Buffs. Issues with primetime at Colorado. Oh, man. It's important to be confident. Okay, that's something that I'm going to preach for forever. I'm 24, don't have kids yet. But whenever I have kids, that's something I know I'm going to be telling them. Like, hey, man, like you have to be confident in everything that you do. It is important. Okay, I'm a big believer that confidence can help people improve at whatever they're doing, right? There's a saying, a little bit of confidence goes a long way. I think Jerry West, the great Jerry West, said it best. Confidence is a lot of this game or any game. If you don't think you can, you won't, end quote. We see this a lot in kids. Okay, when little Johnny scores a few baskets in a row, he usually continues to score because he has confidence. And even if he doesn't continue to score, he at least continues to get some shots up on the rim because he has confidence. Confidence elevates your game. We see the importance of confidence all the time in baseball. Okay, if you ever see a player make a diving play or any sort of awesome offense or defensive play in the field, maybe they rob a home run, whatever it is. Got a text question about a Josh Downs update. We just know that feel free to text the text line 317-228-1430. All we know right now is that it's a lower ankle injury. We don't know the severity of it yet. I promise as soon as we know, I will let you guys know. Back to the topic at hand. Confidence. It's important. When you see a defensive player in baseball make an awesome play, their batting average in their next at bat is always 1,000. It's always 1,000. Okay? Like there's something about making a great play in the field that leads to extra confidence at the plate, which then leads to them usually getting a hit or at least hitting the ball hard somewhere. Okay? Confidence can elevate your game. Pride, on the other hand, too much confidence, it's the ultimate team killer, especially when your head coach has too much pride. Deion Sanders is arguably the most prideful coach in sports. He is all about himself for obvious reasons. Look, with a nickname like Primetime, I think it's pretty given that you're going to be all about yourself. And when it comes to Deion Sanders, you can say, well, Jonathan, he has the right to be prideful. Okay, he has the right. Look at his CVS list or his CVS receipt of accolades. He played professional baseball, only player in sports history to both play in the World Series and in the Super Bowl. He's the best corner we have ever seen. When it comes to his coaching resume, he won a lot of games at Jackson State. Okay? Like the dude has legitimate accolades, right? Which is why he is as prideful as he is. Okay? But here's the thing. That pride is getting in the way of him winning games at Colorado. He won a lot of games at Jackson State, yes, but he's not going to win games at Colorado. He didn't win games last year. They went 4-8. And then he had the audacity at Big 12 Media Days to say that Colorado, once again, who went 4-8 last year, is, quote, everyone's Super Bowl. That's absurd. And that quote comes straight from his pride. They went 4-8 last year because Deion Sanders, primetime, his pride got in the way and ruined the culture at Colorado. Now, the word culture gets thrown around by everyone all the time. Okay. And if Dan was in here, he'd be like, Jonathan, you don't know what culture is. You never coached. Okay, whatever. And look, do I have a full grasp on what a great culture is? Probably not. I played some college baseball, but it's just not the same as high level Division I sports. But I like to think that I have an idea of what a good culture is. Okay. And even if I don't know what a good culture is, I can definitely identify a bad one. Okay. Athlon Sports released an article where they were interviewing guys leaving Colorado, and it revealed some pretty damning things. Now, to be fair, players that are happy don't transfer. Like all these transfers have some sort of bone to pick with Colorado, but some of the stories revealed in this article by Athlon Sports are very revealing. When a former player says, quote, "It's like a real life Grand Theft Auto video game," end quote, that's a red flag. For those not familiar with Grand Theft Auto, it's a game where you're basically a criminal and you run around and you shoot people and steal and stuff. Okay. The kids love it for whatever reason. Okay. And that's not the only quote that's alarming. There are multiple stories floating around about multiple fights in the locker room, guns in the locker room, and a boatload of other crap. It's a red flag. And where there is smoke, there is oftentimes fire. And the one who started the fire is Deion Sanders and the pride that he has. Okay, when your response to players leaving is, quote, "They aren't suited for prime time," end quote, I think that's pretty revealing of the type of person that you are. I think it's pretty revealing of the fact that Deion Sanders' pride is getting in the way. When you listen to Deion Sanders talk about his team, when you listen to him talk after games, nothing is ever his fault. Nothing is ever Deion Sanders' fault. How could it be? He's primetime. And that mindset has ruined the development of some of his best players. Okay, having your starting quarterback, Shehan Sanders, reportedly slap one of his teammates multiple times because that teammate wasn't playing well isn't okay. All right? Seriously. Like I said earlier, I don't have kids, so maybe I don't fully understand this, but I'd like to think that if my kid, whether I was coaching his team or not, repeatedly slapped his teammate, I would like to think that I would step in and be like, "Hey, man, you can't do that." But Deion Sanders hasn't done anything about it. Travis Hunter, the two-way star, even though I don't know if you're really a star if you if you're on a 4-8 football team, but hey, whatever. Let's call him a star for now. Let's say Travis Hunter is a star. He went on his live stream and just ripped his offensive line to shreds. That's not okay. You can't do that. Passing the blame onto other people doesn't help anybody. It doesn't. And that's exactly what Deion Sanders does. And the frustrating part about all of this is that Deion Sanders should be an awesome college football coach. He should be one of the best coaches in the country. He should be able to develop players like nobody's business. Okay, like this dude played in the NFL. Okay, he knows how quarterbacks operate. We've seen him develop his own son, Shehan Sanders, into one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He was one of the better ones coming out of high school as well. His other son is a really good safety. So we've seen him develop young, talented kids before. And for whatever reason, he has no interest in doing that at Colorado. Oh, you aren't good enough? Oh, I guess you just aren't suited for prime time. You can leave. It's an issue. It's a real issue, and it's part of why Deion Sanders is not a good football coach. Okay, the other thing is he should be an awesome recruiter. He is as charismatic as they come. People gravitate toward him. He's cool. Like that dude's cool with the sunglasses and the $1 million smile, and he's always on TV. And whenever he is, it's great TV. He is as charismatic as they come. He should be one of the best recruiters in the country. And the players on his roster should want to play for him because he's so charismatic. And also, he knows football extremely well. Okay, but here's the issue. His pride gets in the way of it. And instead of building players up, he tears them down repeatedly. If a player leaves, if a player doesn't live up to expectations, if a freshman doesn't contribute right away, they just aren't built for prime time, which is so stupid. Okay, my biggest issue, though, is that Deion Sanders he's never made any admission that that team failing last year was partially his fault. Okay? There's never any admittance that the 8 losses from last year could actually be Deion's fault. No, it was his players' fault, not his. And that's the thing. When I look across college sports and professional sports as well, the best coaches take the blame for losses, especially in college sports. They take the blame. Like when Nick Saban lost games, it was his fault. It wasn't, whoever was playing quarterback's fault. It wasn't the defense's fault. It was his fault. When Georgia loses games, Kirby Smart steps up to the podium and he takes responsibility. The best coaches shield their players from being torn down. Deion Sanders does the opposite. He blames the losses on his players and seems to not care about his players at all based on this story from Athlon Sports, and it's his pride getting in the way. Nothing can ever be Deion Sanders' fault because Deion Sanders is great. Prime time, baby. And that's why he's never going to win at Colorado. He's too much about himself, and he's not enough about his team. Okay? Like, if your own head coach doesn't believe in your team, then why in the world would anybody else? Seriously, once his son leaves, they're going to be bad from that point on. Okay? I mean, it's brutal, man. Like, jeez. Nick Cross had to talk to the media today. Oh, boy. This is interesting. This audio coming from James Boyd on Twitter. Really hope there's no cursing here. I haven't listened to this audio yet. Here is Nick Cross talking about the play in which he injured his teammate, Josh Downs. No remorse whatsoever from Nick Cross there. If you can't really hear what he said, his response was, I mean, we're playing football. We're competing. Josh is my guy. I love that guy to death. It's unfortunate. And then someone asked, great question, do you feel like you should have pulled up considering it was 7-on-7? And he didn't say yes. He just said, I mean, we're here to play football. It happens, which is partially true. Okay. But at the same time, come on now. You got to show at least a little bit of remorse of like, yeah, even if you don't feel that way, seriously, like you got to lie and be like, yeah, I should have pulled up. I made a mistake. I hope my guy's okay. I'm going to go and check on him as soon as I can. But nope, no remorse whatsoever from Nick Cross. Yeah, now I really want for Justin Simmons to show up, man. Go get him. You need him. Okay? Even if oh jeez, man. Like you got to pull up, man. Like that's the biggest thing with training camp. You have to make sure no one gets hurt. Seriously. And it's so frustrating because Josh Downs was tearing people up. And I like him. He had a good year last year. Okay, just tearing dudes up in the slot, beating everybody in one-on-one drills. I mean, he was really lighting people up this year. Josh Downs was so far through training camp. And look, this is a real blow for this team. And when it comes to the future of just this Colts season, like not having Josh Downs potentially for the first couple of weeks, once again, we still don't know Like, look, we still don't know the severity of the injury. Good news is we've got, 5 weeks until the season starts. Need him back, need him healthy. Even though, look, less Josh Downs means we get to see more AD Mitchell, which isn't a bad thing. Okay, like we need to figure out whether or not that guy can play. So through the rest of training camp, we're going to see more AD Mitchell stuff, which isn't a bad thing. But man, like we really, really need for Josh Downs to be healthy. As the news continues to come out on Josh Downs and everything going on with him at Colts camp, we will have it for you. The Dan Dockett Show is going to be great today. It's following me. We got the Power Hour. We didn't have it Monday. We're having it today, 2 to 3. Kent Sterling joining the program. He was out, I believe, at Colts camp today, so he should have the latest scoop on Josh Downs. Ryan Burr also joining the show, Dan's show today at 1 o'clock. Probably going to tell us why Anthony Richardson sucks. But hey, he's always fun to have on. That's Dan's show from noon to 3. Ryan Burr at 1, Kent Sterling on the final hour from 2 to 3. Going to be a good one. I'll be back on the air tomorrow from noon to 3. Head over to the Indy Sports Ticket YouTube page. Subscribe. Check us out over there. Join the chat for the next live stream. Follow me on Twitter at __ Jonathan Smith. And follow the station as well at Ticket 1430 for all your updates on the Dan Dockett Show and the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll be back on the air tomorrow from 10 to noon, and I will talk to you guys then.